In the final years of the 21st century, the nations of Earth began taking their first few steps in earnest to expand their presence in space. Permanent settlements were established first on Luna, then Mars, until eventually even the asteroid belt was home to tentative human colonies and outposts. But even as the spread of humanity across the solar system accelerated, the situation on Earth grew dire. The effects of global warming had become more frequent and pronounced, while the rampant overpopulation and shifting economic fortunes threatened to tear human society apart. In an unprecedented display of global unity, the nations of Earth ceded their last remaining sovereignty to the increasingly powerful United Nations. The Security Council transitioned into the executive branch of the new world government, while the Secretary General was granted the responsibilities of its head of state. With tremendous economic, industrial, and political power invested into the UN, a series of ecological recovery programs successfully prevented or reversed the greatest threats posed by climate change. The dangers presented by overpopulation and dwindling resources, however, remained a blight upon the Earth. Colonization efforts on Luna and Mars continued, but progress remained slow. Mankind had seemingly reached the limit of its expansion, with even the most powerful spacecraft incapable of sustaining prolonged colonization efforts outside of the belt. Tensions grew between Earth and Mars. The Martian colonial government pressed for greater sovereignty as calls for total independence were published in secessionist manifestos. More than once, UN ships burned for Mars before negotiations resumed and the seemingly inevitable conflict was again postponed. The balance of power between the two worlds underwent a dramatic shift with the Martian invention of the Epstein drive, a powerful new method of spaceflight that could break the barrier imposed on human expansion. With the military superiority of the United Nations now in doubt, Mars finally had the favorable circumstances it needed to break the status quo. In exchange for Martian independence, the UN received the specifications necessary to construct its own Epstein drives, finally bringing the remainder of the solar system within reach and setting the stage for a new Cold War. The United Nations, together with the newly formed Martian Congressional Republic, swept across the belt and the outer planets, competing for resources, influence, and power. On Ceres, Eros, Ganymede, and a multitude of other minor planets across the system, new colonies were established to support new industries and commerce. Life in the outer planets was difficult, as hundreds of thousands worked to eke out a living for themselves in some of the most inhospitable conditions. In time, this population was altered by their new environment and dehumanized by those born of Earth or Mars. Even their local dialect changed, becoming an amalgamation of influences and contributions derived from a dozen other languages, slang, and physical gestures. Millions across the belt and outer planets languished in poverty while the fruits of their labor were taken back to distant Earth or Mars. There arose a great will among Belters to win their independence, a cause given form in the Outer Planets Alliance. It is a movement stymied by factionalism, however. While the inner planets view the OPA as a single cohesive group, in reality it is a loose confederacy of political idealists, anarchists, criminals, provocateurs, and terrorists. Such calls for independence are fiercely suppressed by Mars and the UN, and the violent reprisals against secessionists, like the massacre on Anderson Station, live on in the memory of Belters as a bitter reminder of how far Earth and Mars are willing to go to protect their supremacy. The solar system stands on a knife edge as rising tensions between Earth and Mars endanger their coalition and threaten the fragile hegemony they impose over the outer planets. Across the belt, piracy and terrorism radicalize the population as opportunistic factions exploit the situation for their own gain. All it will take is a single spark for this delicate peace to come crashing down.
In Overview, the Templin Institute investigates the history and major factions of alternate worlds. This is the last of 4 new pilots we've released this week, and the polls are now open. If you'd like to see an overview of Supreme Commander, Kaiser Reich, or Gears of War, a pledge of just $1 a month on our Patreon page gets you a vote.